I called it a side project where I was dabbling in app creation, and I created an iPhone app called Scan that would scan barcodes. Flash forward, I ended up selling that app to Snapchat, and it was a really, really crazy busy time in my life where I was like hustling, working on that app. I had like raised money from investors for it. I was playing soccer, kind of going to school. And so it went from like super crazy. And then when we sold it, it gave us all of a sudden just ultimate freedom of lifestyle, financial freedom, and freedom of time. And so it was this big question of like, what do we want to do next in our lives? And it was actually Jessica's idea to
do a little bit of traveling.
A little bit.
That was Jess and Garrett, who are travel journalists that have essentially built an empire called the Bucket List Family. Years ago, they set out on a journey to learn to find happiness with less, live a life of compassion and service, and to create lifelong memories together. And they did this by selling all of their belongings, traveling around the world, and documenting it online. Back when Garrett sold his iPhone app to Snapchat, they came to a position of what should we do next? So in 2015 is when they decided to set on their journey together. And they took 3 years living full-time on the road, which is just astounding to me and incredibly just inspiring and hard for me to comprehend. But they did that, and they have traveled to 80 countries together now. In this episode, we have a wonderful conversation and talk about all the things in regards to if they ever get burned out from so much that they do and from traveling so much, what their education is like for their children being on the road and traveling, how traveling has been since COVID even, and what gives them purpose and what helps them keep going and get inspired through all that they do and all the innovation and creativity that they have in their lives. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode. We get into a lot of fun things, including like social media for children and just a lot more. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
We have too.
You said maybe like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, we were in our gym, and you're like, I want to do something new. I want to do something more like that just like really stretches me, and you're like, I want to do a podcast. And I was like,
yeah,
and you're doing it.
I know. And now it's here. Now it's here.
True.
I know, right? Like we would like bounce ideas off each other, talk about all the things that we're going towards, and it's always so fun to connect with you guys because we're kind of in the same realm of what we do. And you guys inspire me so much because you're such go-getters. I'm like amazed at how every time there's some new thing you're doing, I'm like, what? How in the world? Where did you get this idea? Like just so creative, so like just such go-getters, and it's really inspiring. And I know that's part of the reason why you guys are so successful, because people look at you guys and are like, whoa, they're different. They're doing something way different than most people are doing.
I think that's an important thing in just the world of social media is I think the downside of it is social media like kind of funnels people into being the same person and all trying to like compete with each other. And so it's a beautiful thing when you just like take a left turn when everyone else is going right and set yourself apart. Like that's where you find the success, right?
Totally. I mean, you guys are like trendsetters essentially. There's a lot that you've done that inspires so many people.
Honestly, you say all this and I just look at him, I'm like, he's the one. And I'm like, I'm the support, I'm the cheerleader, and I kind of go where he goes. But he's the one who's like reaching for the stars, and then I like help him get there.
Right. I was actually going to ask that, like who's what, like I think people would want to know like who does what job, what role, who's the ambitious creative one, who's the one that's like, let's like calm it down, let's do the business side.
I don't know if those words have ever left my mouth.
I am the queen of moderation.
Right.
And Garrett is the king of extreme.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
What's it like being married to Garrett?
It's so hard. I will say like my life is somewhere completely, like I never in my wildest dreams would have ever been like, oh, I'm going to travel around the world and have a house on the beach in Hawaii. Like that wasn't even like remotely on my radar.
Right.
So Garrett's always the one who's like pushing for more, looking for more. What else is out there? How can we be different? How can, like Garrett doesn't want to be mainstream at all.
Right. I mean, yep. Oh, yeah, I get it. I might not be to the level that you are, but I definitely have that sense inside of me for sure. And Andrew's more like you, like, okay, let's just calm it down. We got a good thing going. Why don't we just keep it the way it is? And I'm like, I want to do this. I'm excited about familiar. This. Because when I came to him about the podcast, I was like, babe, I really want to start a podcast. And he's like, I don't no. You
It's
got a
just
good,
more-
you got
it
a
just
good
sounds like
thing.
more work.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
gotta-
Yeah, he's like, you got it going. Why don't you just keep doing this? I'm like, no, I'm really ready to talk about things and get really in depth on things,
Yeah.
and a podcast would be the place to be. And he was very like skeptical at first, totally like supportive, but like, let's just slow it down. I'm like, okay, I got
Like,
about
let's
all
think
this
about-
equipment.
let's think about it,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And while I'm not quick to jump to things, I still was like, babe, this is the thing. We need to do this. And he's like, I don't know. Like, it took a little while to get it on board. All right, so you guys are so busy in your life. I mean, we love to hang out, and we've hung out here and there, but I think I would enjoy hanging out with you guys more, but we're just both so busy that
We
it's
like
hard.
don't really hang out with friends that much anymore.
I know.
Like we kind of did when we first moved here, and now it's like scheduling, like getting us all girls together. Like
It's difficult.
It's a lot of work.
Partially, that was one of my favorite things when everyone else had like a million reasons to complain about the year of 2020. One of the silver linings that I really appreciated is like everyone's lives slowed down, in my opinion, in a beautiful way that forced them to like reevaluate their lives, reevaluate how they spend their time and their priorities. And it might just be the optimist in me, but it was a very special time for like my life to like recalibrate.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a silver line to everything, and that was definitely it for sure. Everything slowed down on the island completely.
But that's kind of the nice thing about like, you know, you're good friends and you guys are creators and we are too. And so when we finally get together, there's no like, where have you been? It's like, no, we know you've been working, you know, we've been hustling. And so there's that
Yeah.
like common thread.
Totally. You know? And how was it different for you guys being travel journalists, like when COVID happened?
Honestly, it was just what we needed. Like Garrett will never, like we already said, will never ever slow down. It literally took a global pandemic for him to be like, oh, okay. And I had a hard time emotionally last year, but at the end of the day, I feel like it was really good for our family because it showed Garrett. I mean, like we had a few friends here and there, but we didn't feel part of the community. And it wasn't until COVID and everyone was just here and it was just us on the island that we were like, oh, like I feel like I have neighbors. Garrett fell in love with surfing. Like in that aspect, it's what we needed. But now it's good and bad because now like we
We're
have
starting
this
to travel more and more.
yeah,
again.
it's like, do you want to travel or do you want to be home? And honestly, I want to do both. And it's really hard to pick and choose, like when we go,
What's the difference right now with since everything that's happened for getting back into traveling?
I would say there's some good and some bad. The good about traveling currently is you can go to some unique places that might usually on a typical year be very crowded and they're like empty, and it's a special time to experience those places because of how empty they are. The downside is it's just way more like logistically
it's a pain in
nightmarish
the
to
butt.
plan things.
But also,
and
like,
cross
I really
borders.
appreciate how right now people who want to travel are much more conscious
They're, like, more
travelers.
mindful,
They're
right?
super mindful and like they've saved up and they've been locked indoors, and so now people are like, when I'm going somewhere, I'm gonna like really like do it mindfully.
Right.
And that's been really nice to see that I feel like people aren't being so like frivolous with their travels. I think that might change, but you know, at least the last year and the little bit that we have traveled, we just spent the last 3-4 months in Africa, and everybody out there was so happy to see us, like so grateful to have.
Oh, such a special
Tourists?
feeling
Yeah.
when we would visit a lodge and like the village would come out and be like, we haven't had visitors in so long. Like they
Wow,
were so
yeah.
excited. I mean, for most of those places, their livelihood depends on visitors,
Completely,
you know?
I know.
And so that was really fun to be
Yeah.
going around Africa and experience that over and over.
Yeah, I mean, that's something a lot of people didn't even talk about at all. Like, what happens to all these
gosh.
livelihoods that they've worked really hard to
It's
build their.
devastating,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So when you're out there, you're super grateful and you're super mindful of these people and what they've gone through, and you know, hearing other people's experiences in these African villages and these safari guides who haven't worked, you know, and so you try to be as generous as you possibly can because you know they've like really been through it, you know.
Right. Well, for people who don't know you guys, who maybe might be watching, I mean, I know a lot of people know who you guys are, but for people who don't know, can you tell a little bit about how you got started to becoming travel journalists and like essentially becoming the bucket list family?
You take this one, babe.
How did this storm of a lifestyle start? So when we were in college together in Utah, and Jessica was, what do the kids call it, a sugar mama? She was working and I was not. I was playing soccer, and then on the side I had like, I called it a side project where I was dabbling in app creation, and I created an iPhone app called Scan that would scan barcodes. Flash forward, I ended up selling that app to Snapchat, And it was a really, really crazy busy time in my life where I was like hustling, working on that app. I had like raised money from investors for it. I was playing soccer, kind of going to school. And so it went from like super crazy. And then when we sold it, it gave us all of a sudden just ultimate freedom of lifestyle, financial freedom, and freedom of time. And so it was this big question of like, what do we want to do next in our lives? And it was actually Jessica's idea to
do a little bit of traveling.
A little bit.
I wanted to go to Australia. I wanted to go to the Lantern Festival in Thailand. Garrett wanted to go to Tonga. So you're like, sweet, let's do a couple months, 4 months. I think we had like 4 or 5 months planned.
But I
like
really
South
appreciated
Pacific.
Jessica's mindset because we don't know what we want to do next in our lives, like what is the next chapter. We don't feel old enough to like settle down or like retire. What do we want next? Jessica's mindset was perhaps by traveling we can see how different cultures kind of like find joy and happiness and fulfillment, learn from them, and then make this big life decision.
But this is also where you see like my moderation and Garrett's like extreme mentality, just to like, I'm like, let's do a little bit of traveling, and Garrett's like, we will sell everything and we will share it with the world.
Yeah, it's like you don't just take this one little, you're like, I have a little idea, and he's like, I'm gonna make it into an empire.
Totally.
I'm gonna create
Totally.
something fantastic with this idea.
Totally. And Garrett is an avid journal keeper, has been since I met him back in Russia 13 years ago. And so I know he would have documented our travels regardless and stuff, but then with Instagram and YouTube, it was mostly for us, also a little bit for our friends and family we were leaving behind. And then but I do think that was at like the forefront of like influencers and travel influencers back in 2015. And we kind of got on board. Our timing was impeccable and our story was good, so now when people are like, I'm gonna do what you're doing, I'm like,
One thing I'm super grateful for, and I think you do this really well, is because we got started on social media with, I think, a wholesome, like, proper mentality, like intentions of, I want to create this content to forever remember these, like,
yes,
moments and experiences with my family. Now we have this content, whether or not it blew up or became popular or, became a successful YouTube channel. These are videos that we treasure and cherish, and like, again, it had nothing to do with like views and likes and all of that.
For sure.
And so I watch your content. It's the same thing where I'm like, man, they're going to forever treasure like these memories and this content. And you do a good job. I would say ours is very good in that we share wholesome content and memories. You do a really good job of doing that and putting like good quality information into the world that I think is like evergreen because you put so much effort into what you do. That, anyways, it just makes me really happy, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, because more and more you're seeing the opposite on it, where when I see people creating mindless content, it's like, yeah, you're getting the clicks and the likes, but like, I just hope you're proud of this in like 10 years.
Which is also cool to see that
Such
Ellen is like, I mean, this is a perfect example of being like, okay, like we've done the YouTube thing, like what else can we do to like push the limits and like just put better stuff out there? Because at the end of the day, like you've shared what you know and what you've learned, and now it's like, what else can I learn? So now you're sitting here talking to other people. Anyway, it's really awesome that you're doing this.
That's for sure. I'm like so in line with what you just said, because when I started my Instagram and the YouTube channel, I was really just like sharing my life, sharing the healthy fresh fruits and vegetables I was eating, what I was feeding my kid Elvis, and just our life and living simply and wanting to grow our own food. And it just started to grow. I mean, this was back before like social media was really oversaturated, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Like I didn't even realize, like it just completely was not on my radar. And as it was growing, I was like, oh, I can do something with this. People are asking for my recipes. People want to know how to eat plant-based. And then I made one YouTube video, and I said this, or who did I say this to? I look back now, and I had no idea when I made my first YouTube video that amount of views was like a big deal. Like I was just like, cool, I put out a video. Like I didn't even realize at all. Like now if you try to put out a video, it's like, just you have to work so hard to get
for
it,
every single.
Yeah, and I think my first
viewer,
video had like 100,000 views or something, and I was just like, cool. Like I didn't even. It's just so funny how I didn't even realize that at all, and it really just the intentions behind just sharing just authentically memories, because I'm so with you. My kids are gonna look back at these videos. They already do. They already watch their birthday party videos, and they're like, let's watch it again. Like Scout wants to watch her home birthing video when she was born all the time.
Imagine when she's like 40 years old and gets to see that. Like it's a gift.
I actually think that this is just a theory, but I feel like our children are gonna like have heightened memories of their life because they get to replay it over and over again. Whereas like when I think about my childhood, like how many memories do I actually have? It's like a handful, and it's like in a blur, and you remember the ones that are on video camera, but like very little. And so just thinking about how many your kids are gonna remember from all their travels is amazing.
See, when I see people out there, a similar thing happened. So I worked at Snapchat for some time, right? And when I saw like the inner workings of Snapchat, and we would see what type of content people were creating on Snapchat, knowing that it was going to disappear every 24 hours, people started just creating garbage. And there's a lot of negative that can come from Instagram, but you know the whole mentality of like Instagram's a highlight reel. Again, positive and negative. One of the positives is it encourages people to live a more, I don't want to say impressive, but a more meaningful life, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to like make
they
the
want
most
to share
of it,
it,
and they want to share it.
And like people say like do it for the gram, and on one hand you're like that's annoying, they're doing it for something else, but at least they're doing it, you know,
right?
Like, at least they're getting out and like living a life worth documenting.
I'm telling you, when I saw the inner workings of Snapchat and how people who knew they were like not going to remember anything the very next day, they were doing the opposite and living a life like they were not proud of. And I see some of that with what's going on TikTok, and I just hope people will like not have any regrets and create content that they're like proud of rather than just chasing trends.
Especially children and teenagers, because their brains are still developing. I actually want to do an entire episode on like social media and children and how just think back, just imagine our lives in high school right now if we had in junior high, if we had social media and everyone had like a selfie, like their own pages. Oh my gosh. And now there's like I really don't like the face
favorite
filters.
TikToks are the ones of people being like, me as a 13-year-old girl making a dance video versus like 13-year-old girls now. Like
those are hilarious.
Die.
Yeah, those are really funny.
I think you should do that episode, and I'm really curious who you can find, because you want to find someone, right, who's the side of the conversation who thinks kids should spend time on social media
that would be
or like get phones early on.
Yes,
I'd be very curious. If you want someone who's against it, I'm your guy.
I know. Oh, I'm very like, okay, guys, can I get all my friends on board? Can we all just not introduce smartphones until like 18?
Like Garrett's nephew called him like recently and was like, can you convince my mom to help me get an iPhone? And Garrett was like, you called the wrong person.
Wrong guy.
No, this is what I said. I was like, put your mom on the phone. I'll talk some sense into her. And I was like, to my sister, I was like, hey, I spend all day, every day on social media. So much of the goodness in my life has come from social media. And I will still tell you, do not let that boy have a phone.
No way.
Do not put him
my
on
gosh.
social media.
You already are so at such an insecure stage of your life, and it's hard enough as it is, let alone putting your life out there. And honestly, face filters do such a disservice to humanity, in my opinion. And the way that it's just, I'm sensing you're on board with me on this. Like the way that it's completely changes people's perception of what reality is to a point where you're showing the whole world that this is what you look like when really you don't look like that. And then
we literally yesterday had a girl apply for a job, and we were like, oh, you know, like how cute is she? It was like some stories, and then we looked at her profile and we're like, that's a different person.
Yeah,
2 different people. It was crazy.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's actually astounding. And like, even I think people have good intentions and I think most people don't really see the harm in it.
I think you're right.
Yes, and I think
they're not trying to.
And also it's easier to not put yourself out there and show all your flaws and your wrinkles and things like that, because it's easy, because you know people criticize. People are so quick to criticize, so I understand why people do it. But I just think with children, it's fast. I think there's a balance. Like you want to teach children the benefits of all that you can learn while being online and having access to the internet, and just like there's a lot of interesting and important things about that. But giving children full access to like a smartphone where this is heading in a totally different conversation of our course, but giving them full access to that, and like there's so much danger involved with that. But anyways, I do agree completely with like everything you said about the intentions behind on YouTube and views, and how easy it is for people to like move to a place where they're posting content that they might regret down the line because of the views. And there's so much of that actually, and that's one reason why I think people love you so much, because you're honestly putting out super amazing content that's quality. It's inspiring people. Children learn so much from your videos by seeing all your travels and the service work that you guys do. So I think that's why you guys are so successful, because you aren't doing that.
We'll see, even on the topic of kids on social media, because we're almost like hypocrites trying to do both, where when our kids were born, we started an Instagram page for each of them so that we could post a photo a day as a journal of like, hey, here's your life when they get older. But now, I think they have like 300,000 followers on those like pages. And so, it's is a weird thing.
For
We didn't
sure,
really
I
do it
understand.
on purpose.
Because there might be someone listening to this and being like, well, hey, you put your kids online.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the difference, right?
Yeah.
But I do think there's a big difference. But what are your thoughts?
But I think it's that. I think it's your intentions. And our intentions are that we want to put out goodness in the world, but also just it's for our kids to have those memories. So we'll see.
Well, and I think you have to be like super conscious of like how you shape it to your kids, how you like. I mean, I think there would be no greater gift than when Dorothy's 16 years old to be like, you have this platform that you could go and use, and you could change the world, and you could show other 16-year-old girls like the life you're living and the active, healthy lifestyle, the family lifestyle that hopefully at 16 you're still living. We have some friends who are really big on social media. They're 18-year-old girls, and they do just that, and it's amazing. And then you've seen some other 18-year-old girls who've grown up on YouTube and have gone the other way, and so it's just kind of like, I mean,
It comes down to how you raise them.
it comes down to who they are and what they can do with it. But I mean, I still think like even like our kids, we try to never give them like iPads and phones and stuff, but Dorothy sometimes loves making movies. And to me, I'm like, I want my kids to be creators. I don't want them to be consumers. I don't want them to see what's on TikTok and go do that trend. I want them to come up with their own trend, and then they can watch their own TikTok video. Like
Totally.
Go create, and like more power to you. Like do make those memories and create, but just stay away from the consumption.
And then they get to take with it or leave it. Like,
Absolutely.
like, hey, take it or leave it. You can do what you
Yeah.
want. If you don't want to do that, that's interesting. That I've never thought of it that way, because I know that's what you guys do. They have their own channel and everything like that.
So as of now, our kids are quite like unaware of what social
Everything.
media is and how
Yeah.
it works. At soccer practice, a little boy came up to Dorothy and it was like, I love your Instagram, I love your YouTube. And you could see she's like, I don't really know what you're talking about. Like, and I appreciated it. So,
but that's something we will be navigating over the next few years when like
they do become
when
more
they
aware of that.
realize like what that means. And Dorothy came home from school one day, I think a year ago, being like, how many followers do we have? I'm like,
I was like, how do you know what
I was
this
like,
is?
don't even ask, it doesn't matter.
Who talked to you?
Do you guys get criticism sometimes about like having your kids online?
no.
Not really, not too much.
And maybe it's because we've been pretty vocal about it. Like, me early on, I had a really, really hard time putting ourselves out there. Like when we left for our travels, our kids had their Instagram accounts and they were private. And I told Garrett, I was like, I'm not putting my kids out there. You hear those horror stories. And then I've kind of learned over time, Garrett kind of helping me get myself out there and get outside my comfort zone. The good that has come from putting ourselves and our family out there far exceeds
Yes, I totally
the
agree.
minor criticism that you get, which really hurts. Sometimes it really hurts. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, for sure. I'm with you.
You know.
I'm fully with
But because of what we've been able to do and share, I mean, I truly think we've changed lives, and we've been a really good light out in the world. And I always say, I'm like, look, for the most part, people are on social media. You can put out good, bad, or nothing. And I think we should put out good. I think being the light is what we need instead of more darkness or instead of nothing. Like let's just flood social media with good, with families, with health, with like service. Like that's like all we can do,
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be people who disagree with how you do things, but at the end of
Sure.
the day, you have to do with what you feel is right for your
100%.
family and
Yeah.
is best for you and the world and everything like that. I sometimes get people asking me to show more like quote unquote real moments of like my kids having tantrums or something like that. And it's bizarre to me because I'm like, I really care about like showing all the respectful moments. Like I'm only going to film my children when they want to be filmed.
Yeah.
And
and when you're disciplining, first of all, your cameras.
no,
Not your
You're like, oh, you're crying.
What
Let me
kind of
let me-
set this
But it's
shot
funny
up?
because I think we've had certain times like that where like we've like filmed Callie like melting down on the floor, and people are like, "Why aren't you helping your child?"
But then if you don't show
Whatever,
it,
you can appease everybody.
I know.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's important to be like explain that like, listen, I'm normal like everybody else. Like we all have our hard moments. I'm just
Totally.
sharing what is respectful, what my kids would be happy to have online.
Yeah.
Because my kid Elvis does understand, and Sandy, I feel like they do understand that like we're online and the YouTube
Yeah,
videos.
they're
Maybe
starting
not to
to,
the full,
yeah.
but like they enjoy it. And if they don't feel like being on screen, like I do not film them.
Yeah.
Like it's just whenever they want to be on. They pretty much just pop in when they want to be, essentially. And the younger ones, that's obviously a little bit different. But okay, to bring it back a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about your Scan app. Like, what inspired you to even create the Scan app?
I wish I could say it was a really good idea, but the truth is, in my like journal, I had a list of brilliant app ideas that I wanted to create, but I didn't have any experience in the space of app creation. So I was like, okay, so of all my ideas here, this is the dumbest, lamest easiest. I'm going to start there to teach myself how to create the app, and then I'll work my way to the other ideas. And that dumb, lame idea of creating a barcode scanner blew up.
Whoa, so what made it, why did you think it was a dumb idea?
Well, it's just a barcode scanner.
It was just basic. He learned. I remember the day we learned what a QR code was, and we were both like pretty hyped on the technology. We're like, wow, this is like a really endless, technology that you could do so much with. So he was excited about that, and then you kind of just even looked at the apps, and you were like, these are ugly, these are slow. It's a super simple solution. And
at my core, I'm less than a coder. I'm more of a designer.
He's a designer, yeah.
So as a designer, I was like, I could create something that's just better, faster, more simplistic than everything that's out there. And eBay had an app out there. I think Google had a scanning app out there. And again, they were just
when you're going to be like, I'm going to go compete against eBay scanner.
But that's kind of, and so we were in the media a lot because here comes this college kid, freshman, creates this app, and all of a sudden it's outperforming all the big, corporations and their apps. And there was a time where I remember I was going to San Francisco to meet with the creators of Angry Birds to see if they wanted to invest in my app. Mm-hmm. And the day we flew out there, Angry Birds was the number 9 app in the App Store, and my app was the number 10. So I took a screenshot so I could show them hey, we're neighbors in the App Store, in the entire App Store ranking, we were top 10. And so the meeting is happening. I was like, I want to show you guys something. I pull up the App Store, and during that meeting, we had switched. So we were now the number 9, and they were the number 10. I was like, I don't know if I should show you guys this. But it just was going crazy. When those were kind of the glory days of the App Store, where we were pulling in 80 to 100,000 downloads a day.
Wow.
Into this app, and it was going crazy. And so we built the app for 3 years, amassed over 100 million downloads, and then sold it.
That's amazing. And I know I watched your YouTube videos. You had 2 parts where you explained the whole story of how you sold your app.
The acquisition madness.
That was so amazing. It was a really incredible story.
It's a crazy story.
Really crazy story. So for those who don't know, he sold his app for $54 million. And the thing is, though, I really want to know, when you said at the end, you're like, okay, what are we going to do? We're not just going to retire. Why not just retire and live simply? Is there something within you? What is it? Because I think some people might be like, wait, why not just relax a little bit?
I will say I do feel like I'm fortunate in my life to have a lot of examples of people who had that much money or more money that were very unhappy. And I was able to learn from those examples and be like, look, I don't want to follow in their footsteps. I saw money wreck a lot of people. And so we decided together that we would either just be so careful and mindful of this money or pretend like it didn't exist until we were at a point in our lives that we could maturely react to this money. And so one thing that we're super proud of with what we've created as the Bucket List family is when we sold everything and left our home, the reason why we did sell everything is because the money from the acquisition, we put that aside and promised ourselves we wouldn't just blow it traveling. Mm-hmm. So we put that aside and promised not to touch it except for service or nonprofit opportunities. And so everything that we created from the Bucket List family came from $45,000 that we got from selling all of our belongings, and so and started from there.
That's incredible.
And we held by it. We never touched the acquisition money.
I think that's a really important part of your story because a lot of people might be inspired by you and they go, oh, well, they had so much money. Yeah. That's why they got to do it. But you chose to do something really special and unique by not spending it, which is rare because honestly, there's really famous people who make a ton of money, and you can blow it all. You totally can. Or you can be financially responsible and handle it in a different way. And you guys not even just handled it responsibly, you took it to a whole nother level where you're we're not even going to touch it. That's really inspiring.
I think too, Garrett, and we chat about this often. He's, he hasn't made the most amount of money you've ever seen, but and he hasn't been insanely famous or whatever, but something he's so proud of and we're so proud of is in the success we've had, even with Scan, he worked from home. He saw me and Dorothy every single day. He played college soccer while building this big app. His lifestyle, balance was for what we got out of Scan was just amazing. And it's the same thing even now. Garrett really prides himself as a father. Like, most fathers don't get to spend all day every day with their kids, you know? And to be able to have created this lifestyle as a dad, to be able to spend all the time he wants with his kids and travel the world with them. He'll have people like old investors or old like business buddies be like, so when are you going to get back to it? And Garrett's like, are you kidding me? Like, I get paid to travel around the world with my family. Like, what am I getting back to? You know, like,
right.
He's created a lifestyle that I know he's super duper proud of. And like, he's worked really hard for it, but he'll never ever sacrifice health, family, friends for money.
And then on top of it, purpose. And actually,
absolutely,
I don't know if you guys know what the blue zones are. Do you know what they are? They're like the longest living civilizations in the world that have the most centurions, and they all have like 9 common characteristics in why they ended up living so long, and one of them is purpose. Like, they all had, even like well into their old age, had purpose. They were with community. They weren't put into like retire like homes.
Right.
They always had their community. They always had purpose and drive.
See, I almost like hesitate to explain this because it sounds kind of psycho, but when the acquisition happened, we put it in the bank account. We connected with like financial advisors, all of that, and since that day, I haven't checked our bank account because I know if I saw the money in there, because I'm just a human, I would be very tempted to like retire, turn off, and like coast the rest of my life. But knowing how much I depend on purpose and how much joy like that brings it to my life.
Like, literally, Garrett doesn't carry a wallet. He doesn't have, I carry his wallet, and he is like millions of dollars, either plus or minus where he thinks we are at. Like, he has no idea how much money we have.
But because I know mentally what that would do to me, and I want to stay like young and hustle and and go at life with purpose. And so it's a weird thing, but that's kind of where we're at.
That's really interesting and inspiring.
Isn't that interesting?
So how were you guys raised? Like, I think a lot of people might be like, well, were they raised in a different way? What made them the way that they are? Both of you.
I was raised in the most like like, I'm like the American girl next door, like 100% that was me. You were, I feel like, kind of the same, but your parents split at a young age, and I do think like you even took a BYU like a entrepreneurship class where they told you like these are kind of some of the things that make for a really good entrepreneur. But it went as far as like your mom's you're a second generation immigrant, you're like, you don't sleep well. Like, there are all these things like that Garrett kind of fits the bill for just like a super successful entrepreneur.
But we did both grow up like comfortably with money.
Definitely upper middle class for both of us, yeah.
But we both had parents that didn't help us at all financially. Once we hit college, like that was done. So that was an interesting part to it. I'm not sure like how it played a role, but we both grew up that way.
And what examples did your parents set for you guys?
When I speak of people who had money and no longer do, my parents are very good, bad examples of that. So that was ingrained in me of money will not bring you happiness. Money can solve problems if you treat it correctly.
It could be gone in a split
Or it could like create a lot of problems.
So I think in those YouTube videos on our channel where I explained the acquisition, I explained that a legal part to the acquisition is that I wasn't allowed to disclose that the acquisition even happened. And so there I was, having sold my company for $54 million as a college student, and legally I could not tell my parents, my family, my friends, like anyone.
So we just told our family, we were like, Garrett's company's partnering with a company out in LA. We're moving to LA.
And like legally we had no choice.
And that's like all we did.
And it wasn't until, crazy story, but it wasn't until North Korea hacked the company's emails and it was all leaked out to journalists, and this like story went out in the Wall Street Journal explaining Snapchat acquired this Utah company for $54 million from Garrett G, and all of a sudden my family and my friends are texting me like, wait, what? And that's how it all like spilled out. It was crazy.
So why didn't they want you to tell anyone?
They were just a super like confidential company. You know how kind of Apple and something, they just
a lot of tech companies will do it.
Right, it's all secret. They don't want you to know how much they spent on
Which
things.
we were at the time, we were super grateful for it. We didn't want anybody to treat us differently. We just wanted to, do our thing.
Do you feel like people do treat you differently now? Not everyone knows.
I would say we've been lucky and fortunate that 99% of people in our lives treat us same old, and hopefully we've not changed ourselves who we are. But there's been some unfortunate cases of some people like definitely treating us different because of that.
Right. Well, I think anyone who has met you guys will say that you are just as genuine and kind as you come across online. Like I've spoken to people who be like, oh, you know them? I'm like, oh my gosh, they're like the nicest people. You guys really are as nice as you come across online, which I don't know if it's always the case for a lot of people, but for you guys, it's for sure. For sure. So we already talked about the roles in your business, and actually we didn't really get into it. We started to dabble, but like, you're the dreamer. Are you the business side? Do you kind of like...
I do everything else. Like, literally, Garrett does, like, this, like, the editing, the photography, the videography. Creative. And I'm
Logistics.
literally 12,000 other things.
So that's like the business.
Yeah, so I plan the travel, I do the brand deals, I feed the children, I do the laundry, I take out the trash, I fix the garbage disposal. Like, I do all of the things. Which, yeah, it's a lot, but it's kind of just the way we work. And I think everybody has different, way their marriages work, and this is kind of what's worked for us.
I mean, our family's completely not traditional as well, because I'm the same. I'm like the Garrett. I'm like doing all the photography and the videography, and that takes a lot of time. Like, a lot of people might not realize that. I actually sometimes get messages of people being like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, really?
But also I think, and I'm sure Andrew would understand, like, there is a way to, you have to learn how to work with creatives and kind of give them their space and let them do their thing. And see them in environments that, like, thrive. Like, and I'm sure Andrew would agree that, like, you learn to have to give and give so that they can have their space, and you're all so much more happy and successful because of it. It's super annoying, but that's just kind of...
Well, and I'm going to vent to a fellow creative. Yeah. It's a tough thing when what you do, like, nobody else can do. Like, nobody can, like... I'm just saying,
I'm gonna go hang out with Andrew now.
This like comes across as the most, like, pretentious, dumb thing to say, but if, like, Jessica's like, hey, you, like, do this for me, and it's like, but, like, what I'm doing, you can't do that for me. Like, it's a tough thing, and yet in a marriage you want to just be able to, like, help each other in both ways. It's a tough situation.
No, I mean, I definitely have times where Andrew would be like, Ellen, why are you working so long on this? Like, it's fine, just put it out there. I'm like, no, it's not done. And he'd be like, it looks fine to me. I'm like, you don't understand. Like I can't just put something out there I'm not proud of. And he'll, on his level, be like, it looks great, babe. What are you worried about? And I'm like, no, like, you really don't understand. I need, like, 4 more hours. He's like, 4 more hours? Like, are you serious right now? So for sure. Andrew, like, does all of our emails, and he does all the, similar type with you, Jessica, with the kids and stuff. I'll hop in and do some homeschooling with them, but Andrew does most of it. Oh, we should talk about schooling. What is education like for your kids?
Education, gosh, that's the topic of discussion at in our family right now.
Discussion, argument, heated discussion.
Yeah. I think, too, like, we both grew up at the super, like, traditional school, and that's kind of, I think, what we always pictured. And in Hawaii, and now particularly during the pandemic, it's just kind of all out the window. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of now, like, really, me in particular, Garrett wanted to homeschool starting last year. And anyway, our kids are in a private school right now, and I'm just happy they're in school. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, it's not what it should be. And now we're close to pulling them.
Oh, it's so difficult. I think a lot of people are actually pulling their kids out of school right now. A lot of teachers are actually sometimes quitting even and finding ways to homeschool kids that have been pulled out and wanting to create, like, homeschool groups and stuff.
And that's what a bunch of our friends have started doing. Yes. And I think we're, like, pretty close behind. I'm hoping we don't. I think we're at the best school on the island, and I'm afraid that if we pull it, we can't get back in.
Oh, really?
But
you're more inspired to homeschool.
But I'm kind of like, if Garrett's the one who wants to be in Hawaii, like, forever, and I'm like, if this is a long-term play here, and if we pull, then I don't know what the long-term plan is, because I think we might need to leave the island for a few years, which I'm open to. But he's in deep. He loves.
Yeah, tell me, what are your thoughts?
I mean, just at, like, a high level, I've always, like, valued education over schooling, and so people think that I hate school and, like, college and all that, but I don't. Like, I love the social, and there's a lot of goodness that can come from school, but most of that goodness is currently not happening due to COVID. And so, like, if if you're not getting that, then like why
What are
school?
you getting? Yeah.
If you're just wanting education, well, you can get that a lot of different ways. And so just with the current state of things, I don't think school is in an awesome place. And so until then, yeah, my vote is to,
I do love how, I think there's been a handful of times when we've talked about the Fishers, your family, when we're like, man, like everybody's lives was flipped upside down except for the Fishers.
Except for the Fishers. Our life did not change.
Still eating out of the garden, still homeschooling.
Our life did not change very
Still
much,
not
that's for sure. We, work from home, homeschool from home. Our life did not change that much. But so many kids and families have suffered and are still suffering because there might be families who feel the same way as you and they aren't able to pull their kids out of school. And I just feel so much for that because you really want your kids to be able to be in a place that you're proud of, that you really believe is going to be best for their growth. And I know there's so many amazing teachers that are doing their best, and like there's just so many struggles right now.
So
it's really tough.
It's so tough. And this school, like, they're really just doing the best they can, but when you have voices from everywhere and you're trying to please everyone, like it just turns into a mess, unfortunately.
It's really sad.
Props to you guys though. I think that speaks a lot that your lifestyle wasn't influenced that much by like these outside forces, I think that's a cool thing that you guys should be proud of.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like for us, our goal has always been to like get more closer to like nature, natural living, growing our own food and stuff, and it is a little bit of a testament to be like, okay, so what would happen if things got crazy? Totally. But
I mean, I don't know how much on your podcast or to your own like community you've expressed this. Probably not, because you guys are humble people, but one thing I think worth sharing is how much in our community and our group of friends, like you guys are just this like source of just like information and knowledge, and the way that you guys share it is always very like friendly, where you're never like, how now in today's world there's a lot of like, I don't know if you'd even call it bullying of people, like putting pressure on like, hey, this is how you should think, this is how you should live. I've always been grateful how you guys are constantly like sharing information, but it's not in like a overpowering way. It's like hey, this is where we've found some like health and joy and goodness in our life, and we want to like share it with you. Anyways, it's cool how you guys have become that voice in not just our friends group, but like the community.
Thanks. Have you noticed that like over the last year more people are kind of turning to you for like the expertise, because you guys have been living this way for a while now? I
don't know if I've really noticed it. But I mean,
I just wonder if more people are like looking up the homeschooling situation.
Oh, for sure that as like, well, and just growing your own food, being like, oh wow, maybe we should be doing that type of thing,
right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's so nice. Thank you so much. A lot of people actually assume that maybe like all my friends are vegan or plant-based. How do you get all your friends to all have the same opinions as you? I was like, no, that's not what a friendship is.
Exactly.
Like, no, for me, friendship is not about like us all aligning on everything. Like, it's about like finding common ground, being open to each other's perspectives, and like respecting each other. Like, everyone's coming from a good place and doing what they feel is best.
See, I think that's cool. That's what I was trying to say, because I think on the online community you can definitely have like a niche demographic, but like in the real world you've done a cool job of like being the source of information in the community, like offline and social media all aside.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
I was surfing this morning and people were talking about your podcast out on the surf.
No way.
Yeah, it was cool. They were having like a conversation about it, and I hadn't like watched it yet, and so it was fun to hear their like perspectives on it.
That's awesome.
I don't even know who the people were, but they were talking about it.
Really? Not even Brett? Brett wasn't out there?
Well, he was out there with me, but it was
like
two other people that were chatting about it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I'm really happy with that episode, and I love that I'm doing this one now. Something I want to channel and shift into in this episode is like, is there any advice you have for people that might like maybe didn't come from the situation that you did, and maybe they're inspired and they're like, I really want to create something, I want to live a life with purpose, I want to be successful, whatever success is for them, but obviously different, and maybe they come from a different background or socioeconomic circumstance. Like, what advice do you have for those people?
Well, I think it always just comes down to those intentions, right? Like, if I want to do Instagram because I want to travel for free and I want to have a lot of followers, like that's when you're like, no, you shouldn't travel. But if you're like, I just want to be with my family and I want to document it and remember it forever, then it's like, well, go and do it. And like, worst case scenario, if nobody ever watches your video or ever sees your post, you had a great time with your family. Like, it doesn't matter. So when we're like trying to encourage people to do stuff, it really just, it's like, if you have those pure intentions, then it's never a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good advice, because I'm sure you're the same way, that if somebody comes with the intentions of like, hey, I want a successful YouTube channel, or I want a lot of followers on Instagram, it's like, I don't know how to give you advice. It's really tricky.
Oh, I have no advice for it.
Like, well, and like you said, like our timing was impeccable, and your timing was impeccable. Like you just put out a video, you didn't even realize that 100,000 views was like a lot. You were just kind of like, there's my video.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so when you go into it just being like, I want to document my life, I want to share some goodness with the world, then like everybody wins, even if you're, you know.
That's good advice.
So what about for those who like maybe they have a different dream and they're not trying to be like online or anything, but they just want to be successful and like doing what they love, but maybe they feel really stuck. Like they're like, I can't get out of this hard place that I'm in. You know, like how do we move forward from there to help people like that, or how do they help themselves?
You go.
Jess, a little bit about us. So Jess hates it when how do you say it? When I give advice to other people. The amount of people who have dropped out of school, changed their religion, quit their job
Garrett's
because of
brother's like, so I decided to leave our church because of what you said. And Garrett's like, what?
Turns out I say a lot of just things off the top of my head.
People really take to heart Garrett's advice. And even, you know, Heather, they left and, you know, her husband was like, well, you know, Garrett and I sat down for lunch and Heather was like, yeah, now he wants to travel around the world.
What did you say? And I was like, I don't remember. We were just having lunch together.
That's the effect you have on people.
If I were to try to defend myself, it would be, I see myself as like an average human, and I was able to accomplish like my dreams. And so I think I do have a gift that I can see people's like highest potential inside them. And so when I sit down or am chatting with someone, I'm like, oh, I see the world in you, so I want the world for you. And so I encourage them and like, hey, go chase your dreams, like go for it. If you could see yourself the way that I see you, you would just go for it. And so I think that's why I might have that effect sometimes on people. But it is the truth. It's just I've like felt just the fullness of joy from pursuing my passions and dreams, and why would I not want that for everyone?
Totally, that's beautiful, because I think a lot of people, they might want to do something but they're scared, or they don't have like support or anyone being like their cheerleader like Garrett, and they're like, I'm afraid to just step out and take a risk and just do something different even, or just feeling stuck, right? But like drive and purpose is huge, because not everybody has the same drive.
Well, and even for me, who is like, you know, the queen of moderation, and I hate how much Garrett pushes me outside my comfort zone. Like, I'm the first one to admit that, like, I'm thriving in a life that I never pictured. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought I would love living out of a suitcase. And now I've turned into this, like, minimalistic person who I can't imagine any other way, you know? And so sometimes when you know, just thinking differently and putting yourself in a new situation, like, when we came back from 4 months of travel that we had initially set off, we looked at each other and we were like, okay, like, let's start the next business. And then we both were like, but are we liking this? Are we not? And like, we were both surprised. I mean, especially me, to be like, I'm really enjoying this and I want to keep traveling and I'm good at it. And like, it's been a life that I'm living that's completely different, like I said, than I would have ever imagined. But I'm grateful for it.
I think it also comes to being open to the possibilities of what might come to your availability.
Yeah,
you know, because an opportunity might come your way. There's a book that children's book that's like, what do you do with a chance? Have you ever seen that book?
I haven't.
And it talks about how like I had that first chance and I didn't take it, and then they started coming less and less because I just stopped taking the chances. And then it was like, I decided one day, if I get another chance again, I'm gonna grab it, take hold of it. And it was like the biggest chance I ever saw, and then he like soars. It's a really cute.
I like that.
And if there's one thing that we can all probably have in common from this last year, is just the inconsistency, and like, stuff is not what you expected. But if you kind of look at it and try to change it and do something, you know, I think a lot of new possibilities have been presented to each and every one of us over the last year and a half, and you've had to like redo the way you do things and rethink the way you do things, and I think it's okay. Like, I've learned how to let go to plans. And that's something I think that's really important, that everybody kind of does. You have to let go of like preconceived notions and plans and how you thought about things different, you know, before, and just being open to new possibilities, because a lot of good can come from it, you know?
Totally. Garrett, you have anything to say to that?
Yeah, my mind's like racing.
Yeah.
All he's thinking, he's going to get in the car and be like, I told you so.
No. I just what she said about how, especially like COVID and the pandemic and everything, really like shook everyone's lives. I mean, to an optimist and entrepreneur, all you just see is endless opportunity.
Yeah.
So that was
For sure.
Have you guys ever seen the documentary FIRE? It's called it's an acronym, and it's like financial independence, retire early. It's a really good. Oh, you have seen it.
I've
heard of it.
I think I've heard you talk about it before.
Right. Yeah. Our friend did a screening for it, Quinn.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And a bunch of people showed up. It was so cool, and it's such an inspiring documentary because it shows real people with all different kinds of backgrounds and circumstances deciding like I am in control of my fate and my the rest of my future, and I'm going to do something about it. And it takes step by step by what people do to like make short-term sacrifices for like long-term gains, and it's incredible what people can accomplish with like just like an understanding on how to get there, right? And that yes, there will be sacrifices, and that's sometimes good because you experience that and then you really appreciate it down the road when you get all that success. Anyways, why do you think you're as ambitious as you are?
So I have been deep diving into Enneagrams since
Yes.
I tore my ACL.
Thank you.
earlier
Let's
this
talk
year,
about it.
Right? Garrett's like, I'm leaving. No, I think Garrett is just that 7 through and through. He's never content.
7? You don't think you're a 3?
No, because he does stuff for freedom, not for success.
No?
Seven.
Wait, you're shaking your head.
He doesn't want to be put in a box. He calls himself divergent. I'm like,
Right. Andrew's like, what's the Enneagram that doesn't care about Enneagrams? That's the number I am.
that's Garrett. Well, because I was like, I've been deep diving, and I was like, Garrett, you're an average 7. Oh, that just made him so mad.
Average 7.
He's like, I'm average, nothing.
And then I learned that there's a healthy 7. I would rather be an unhealthy 7
than an average 7.
So,
but Garrett, he's never, for the good and for the bad, he's never content with complacency. Which as a 9 is like the name of the game. For me, it's like status quo, right? And so it's this constant, like, he always is going to be reaching for more, wanting more. What's next?
I think it's kind of like a drug where
it is a drug.
You put in hard work and you feel the same fear that everyone feels and experiences when they step outside their comfort zone, and then you taste the reward. Tastes good. You want more.
For people who don't know what the Enneagram is, look it up. It's, how do you spell it? ENNEA.
GRAM.
GRAM. And so a 9 would be like, what's it called? A peacemaker.
I'm a peacemaker.
7, adventurous.
An enthusiast.
Oh, enthusiast. I thought maybe you would be a 3,
A lot
which
of people
is the
have
achiever.
thought that. Yeah, no.
I
mean, because I can see where you think that, because he is like an achiever and super competitive.
But it comes down to your motivation?
To your core motivation.
Right,
And he
that
does
makes sense.
stuff not to achieve, but for
The purpose.
to live life.
To live
You
life.
know what
yes,
I
that
mean?
makes sense. You're not doing it for like the money per se.
money
You're doing
gains.
it for just your own purpose inside.
Which makes me
And Ellen is
awesome 7.
And Ellen is like wrote the chapter on 8s.
I am 1,000% an 8. And that's why I'm like, I am made for podcasting, you guys.
Oh, you totally are.
I'm so made for this. And even though I haven't done any like challenging type of discussions with opposing views yet, I'm working on it. And it's not going to be the entire podcast, but every once in a while I want to sprinkle in an episode
Which is
that's
just
like,
so funny, because that's like what you thrive on, is this like discussion and debate, and that's what makes me like crawl into a hole. I'm like,
okay, I have this theory. Okay, let me know. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I actually don't think a 9 is a peacemaker. I think 9s are avoiders. I feel like it's more like avoiding conflict as opposed to bringing people together.
I think there's different kinds of 9s.
Right. Okay. So
Some
it's like
that
a
do
healthy
that.
9 that brings people together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And 9s are so good about seeing everybody's view, right? Like you understand, and which also makes you kind of less opinionated, because literally you see all the sides.
Yes.
So it comes across as if you don't have an opinion.
So it
but
comes
you're
across,
just-
but yeah, you just, and that's literally how it is with like politics today. Like, I see both sides.
Right.
Is there a number that's the most opinionated?
I think the 8.
8s and 1s.
8s. Yes. 8. The thing is though, with me, I actually think the beauty about me, right? I'm just kidding. I'm being all like positive about myself. But what I like about myself, something I like about myself, is that I love to be challenged. I love to hear other perspectives. Obviously, only with people who want to engage in the discussion, who are enjoying it, and who aren't like if I start engaging with someone who's like a 9 that's like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, that's not fun. I want to talk to someone who enjoys the discussion, who wants to hear all sides and go back and forth. And at the end of the day, something that I really like is that I'm pretty good at bringing people together and like finding common ground and being like, okay, so where do we agree? Where do we disagree? How can we like just understand why we think the way that we do?
Yeah.
And that's like my core foundation. That's like my number one heart goal, is like bringing people together, and where can we find common ground, and how can we understand each other better?
Totally.
That's my number one goal probably in life. I've realized over the years. Maybe not number one, but it's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
So do you guys ever get burned out, like from all that you do? And how do you prevent burnout?
we're almost there.
Yeah.
Constantly. I'm sure, especially you and I on the creative side of things, because when you care too much about something, you're just constantly like knocking on the door of burnout. I'm not quite there yet, but I can feel it like around the corner, and I'm trying my best to like avoid it.
I think
you see
too,
it
though, like,
so much on YouTube.
Like working with your spouse, we've really had to learn what each other's like triggers are and where they find stress and where they don't. So like there are times where I can tell Garrett's on the verge, where he can tell I'm on the verge, and so we've had to just over the last literally like 6 years had to like step in and kind of carry some extra weight when we see someone is like, you know, struggling.
So we currently our focus is majority of it is on our Instagram and our YouTube, but we're shifting right now, and we started a company called the Bucket List Studios, and our hope is to create a cartoon. And at the very beginning, go back to like where this idea was born, and it came from kind of this topic of not wanting to burn out. And I'd say there was two main drives to it. One was thinking of our children and what's best for them, and we're like, okay, if our kids are like, hey, we don't want this social media, we don't want this fame, we just want to turn it off, then we would respect it and we would turn it off. And so wanting to almost like prepare for that moment, we decided to,
that's where we're at.
In a way, like transition this into a cartoon where our hard work and the story that we've created could live on, while we can just like back out and back into the shadows and like live our regular lives. And so that's like
that's where we're at. But that's cartoon. Also now we're in the like building of that phase. So we're trying to build that up. So we're like doubling up. We're exhausted right now.
Right.
But it's awesome. I think Garrett, like as kind of a serial entrepreneur, like this is your new, I mean, you know, the same thing with like YouTube, like you can get burnout, and Garrett's super burnout of the YouTubes and the editing and stuff like that. So now it's like, where else can I like,
the hope is that the cartoon will pick up and I can like piece out on the YouTube, and then
that's actually that's what my podcast is. Totally. My brain is the exact same as with the thought process. That's actually why I started the podcast on a new channel. The main reason why I started on a new channel, because I do want to, you know, eventually phase out of it and have just the podcast where my children aren't in it, and just preparing for that, like you said, for sure. And
because the alternative is burning out, and then it's just done. You know?
Totally. So I do feel you for sure. And I also am like very aware of like, I do want to have my kids like less online as time goes on, and the podcast, I'm feeling so much purpose from it, being able to have these conversations, and then on top of it, phasing them out. So that makes sense. And as a result, you're like doubling down. So what are all the things you're doing now?
So Garrett is...
We've built a team.
He's built a team.
There's 10 of us now.
For the Bucket List Studios.
The Bucket List Studios, they're starting all the character development and what it's so like excited. The look and feel.
Oh, as a creative, it's just like a playground right now, because we're designing the look and feel of it. We're writing the story of like the
and you're starting to develop like merch and product, and what like it's going to be like a full, like we want it to be an online offline experience. It's going to be like a big, not just a show. You know what I mean? Like the last thing we want with our Instagram, YouTube, and this show is for it to just put people online more. Like if anything, all of our goal with this is to take people off the line. You know,
like
offline.
Inspire people. Oh, you'll really appreciate this. Like as soon as you see, I'm really excited when it's ready to show you even just like a little bit of it, because you'll see that it's not like mindless kid entertainment.
Oh my gosh, there's such a hole like that. You're feeling such a need right now. I can't even believe.
Even when you like feel the pace of the cartoon, it's not just like bam, 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 bam in your face.
We were just talking about that because we watched this new movie that came out. Literally all the new movies are just super neon, super flash, flash, flash. All these like pig pow. Like it's incredible how fast it is. Like I'm just like, what is going on? It feels like a TikTok type thing, but a whole movie. And then we watched To Kill a Mockingbird, black and white film. A few days later, I was like, this is so nice. This is so nice.
No, you'll be really proud of what we're trying to create, because it's exactly the opposite of what's currently out there. And I think it'll throw a lot of people off, and like, but
I think people are picturing one thing, and it's going to be something different.
Because when you hear cartoon, you think just like dumb entertainment, people like cartoon characters.
I mean, because it would be easy though to turn what we've done into a Dora the Explorer type of thing.
Yeah. Know? So how's it going to be different from like a grown up Daniel Tiger or a grown up Dora the
Explorer?
Explorer?
You'll see, it's as of now the way we've like written it out, but we're trying to be very open minded and flexible. The beauty of creating something in today's world is like, does it live on Netflix or YouTube or Disney Plus? Like we're very open minded in how we're creating this. The more important thing to us is how can we create a very meaningful story and then share it with as many people around the world to like better the world. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to do that, but as of now we've written out this like arc of a story that takes place across 3 seasons 30 episodes total, and it's like you watch it in order. You go on this journey rather than just most cartoons that you can just tune in, watch one, and then that's that, you know?
So to try to, and something that's been really important to us from the beginning is that our audience, our current existing audience, like every Sunday we get pictures and videos and stories of people who sit down with their kids and watch it as a family. And we want that to be the same, which is very tough to do, to have a full family demographic that will all sit down and watch an animated 20-minute episode together. Like, it's really tough. Like, we're really going up against something tough to try to create what we're looking for, but it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna do it.
I don't think there's anybody else out there doing what you're doing right now, and that's what makes you guys so successful, because you're really just pushing the limits, expanding the horizons, figuring out where is there a need, where can we put good into the world. Because honestly, it really bothers me how the shows, the options that my children have to watch are so, most of them don't have a positive purpose. Most of them have negative purposes with just the habits that you're teaching in life. And it's mindless. Like, very, very little of it is valuable. It was funny when because initially we didn't know, are we going to do this ourselves? Are we going to, Garrett shopped this around to all the big networks, and we would go into some of these meetings and they're like, okay, this is great. I get it. We're going to have 48 7-minute episodes, and you're like, huh? Like, and they kind of just started to put you into these like boxes, and even Netflix is like, we have a 3 to 5 group, a 5 to 7 group, and we're like, sorry, we are full family. Right.
So a year ago, I went and pitched all the big networks, and they fell in love with it based just off of our idea and pitch. And we had offers from Disney Plus and HBO Max that it was a really tough decision, but we ended up turning down those offers because we're like, no, if we want to create something like really, really pure, we can't have these like outside pressures. So let us like work on it on our own, and then take that to them and see if they now like it. Maybe they will. If they don't, there's a lot of different ways that we can like share this with the world. So that's where we're at.
I cannot wait for it to come out, and I know it's going to be insanely successful.
We'll see when it comes out. It's gonna be a while, but we're like slow cooking it so that it's exactly what we want it to be.
It's like that in and of itself could be like an entire full-time job plus.
I know.
And then on top of it,
and we're still traveling.
So, but really though, like how do you prevent the burnout? Like for us, we have our like routines and like, hey, this is what we do to help us. So what do you guys do to help you guys not to just get so burnt out from everything in general and just wanting to shut up?
I mean, I think this is the first time in our lives where, in the last 6 years, I should say, where we're hiring a team, where we're like, we have to find really amazing people to like help us build this. And we've started, and we have some amazing people already that see the vision and are so stoked on it. And
it's tough. It's tough working for us. The fact that we'll like be in Africa on a completely different time zone and have like 30 minutes on like sketchy internet connection. That we're like, all right, guys, here's everything you got to do next week. We're going to have internet connection again in 10 days. We'll check in, So props to our team.
We're not easy to work
with.
That's
good
for
job
sure.
So far.
Yeah.
But I also, okay. So for me, thinking of burnout, it's like right there around the corner for me. But also, I've just found to like, I enjoy that feeling of being exhausted doing something you actually love and care about, rather than like anyone who's had a 9 to 5 that they don't care about and they're exhausted but for a different reason. Like you're either going to be tired or exhausted either way. You might as well do it like something you really care about. And so yeah, we feel like close to burnout, but we're like super grateful for what we do.
You're right. There is a difference between being burnt out from something you're not enjoying and it's like kind of sucking your soul a little bit.
Totally.
Versus, which is, we all have those jobs in the beginning, right? Some of us have those jobs for their life, and there's certain jobs that maybe.
That's literally, I feel like motherhood, right? Wait, you can really get burnt out of like. It's repetitive, right? So you have to find those ways to not get burnout, even just from the daily routine,
You know what I think is a good sign of it is like I'll go to sleep just so painfully exhausted, but I wake up like excited to like get back to work. When Snapchat bought my app, I went and I worked for Snapchat. And I was excited for a new opportunity. I had never had like a real job before at that point, and all of a sudden here I was like director of
So
design.
You never have
Snapchat.
Actually done the working
9 to 5.
at a coffee shop 9 to 5.
Yeah. This was my first time, and I was excited. Like it felt like the first day of school when I was going, and very quickly, like there's no better way to say it than I just felt my soul being like sucked out of me. It was so gross. Like I remember for the first time in my life, I cared more what like my boss thought of me than what I thought of myself, which is such a twisted, gross, toxic feeling, right? And so many different things about it where I was like, holy cow. And then going back to like, I would wake up not excited to go to work or to like live my day. And so really quickly, I was like, Jess, I think I need to quit Snapchat. She's like, it's been a month.
It was 3 months.
And it was difficult because I couldn't give her like a solid answer as to this is why I need to quit. But fortunately for me, like Jessica knows me better than anyone else and like understood the underlying like what's going on here and supported my like weird decision to leave such a good job.
Well, I think it's partly your personality too, because some personalities do thrive at a simple job. Actually, it's not simple. My sister's husband, who's amazing, he's a structural engineer and he loves his job. It's a 9-to-5 job, but he really loves it. And personalities really are different. Some people really like that consistency and don't have the same.
And that's how my dad was. Like my dad, and he's worked at the same company for the last 25 years, 9 to 5. And so when Garrett went to Snapchat, I was stoked. I was like, he's going to come home. He's going to turn off his laptop at 5 p.m. and he's going to be like present. And Garrett, I mean, he's always thinking of the next thing. So like most nights, you know, like we're doing all our family stuff, but Garrett's still got to be checking this, and doing this, and filming that, you know. But that's just what he loves. Right. So, you know, and for me, like my happiness comes from his happiness. For the good and the bad.
Well, that's the start of a foundation of a great relationship is helping each other love what you do and love your life, for sure. Do you guys ever do, like, we sometimes do like a no screen family day where we'll just like put it all away, like no screens at all, and we'll just like hang out together, and that always is like a really good refresher to be like, look, mom's not going to be on like doing her work at all.
I love that.
And also I think something that was conscious for me, like, okay, my dad is such a great dad. He has shown me love my entire life. I've always felt loved from my dad because words of affirmation is kind of like my love language, and he's always just been so great with that. One thing I did notice though growing up is that he had a BlackBerry. I probably have told him this, but he had a BlackBerry before smartphones were out, and I always noticed that, like, you know, when we would be at the dinner table, he'd be looking at his BlackBerry, or if I like talked to him, maybe not like looking up right away, and like that did something to me. And so I feel like now I'm like very aware of like, even if I'm working and I'm hustling, like if my kids come up to me and they're wanting to talk to me, like put it down and look them in the eye. And this applies to anyone, even if your job isn't about anything online. Like how easy it is to just get on your phone so much, whereas and to just get sucked into it, you know. And that's another thing with the kid thing. It's like it's addicting for adults, let alone kids. So you're on a screen and then your children come up to you and want to say something to you, like not even taking more than a second to like put it down and look them in the eye, you know, like that I feel like is really important. So I have a couple more questions that are like simple questions that you probably get asked all the time, but I still find them fascinating. What is your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Mine is New Zealand. I love New Zealand. It's just so beautiful. People there are so active and outdoors. Like everywhere you turn, it's just a postcard. It's like, it's just another planet. I would move there in a heartbeat.
And then mine is most any island anywhere in the world, which is why we live here. But also, I mean, specifically in Tanzania, there's an island, Zanzibar. It's a very special place.
That sounds really fun.
Baby sea turtles, dolphins, crystal clear water. It's got it all.
Amazing. I haven't been to very many places in the world. Andrew and I have only been out of the country. I've been to like a handful of countries out of the world, but I have been to Bhutan, which is really random and different.
You have.
And I remember when you guys were going to go there, and I was like, I've been there.
I've been to Bhutan. That's like one of those random countries.
And so
not a lot of people have been to.
Right. And I could be like, look, guys, I've been there, just because I haven't been to like near anywhere that you've been.
That's awesome.
But I've been to Bhutan, and it was beautiful. Yeah. Such an amazing place to visit.
That's a very special place.
The culture there, everyone is so kind. It's just so pristine. It's amazing.
And how they've kept it so pure.
Right. At least when I had gone,
nobody else has done that before.
Right. Like at least when I had gone, they had only recently opened up the country, and it cost $100 a day just to get into the country, and they didn't have any imports from, or at least as far as I was aware, which was incredible. Like just so different and crazy. So the other thing is, what is the scariest thing you've experienced? Any like really scary things you've experienced on the road?
What was it just recently
that just
happened? It was very scary. We had a situation in Mexico where we went on a surf trip, and it was us and our friends and all the little kids on board, and we went out and very quickly went from like a pretty nice day to just crazy lightning storm, and then the clouds came in so thick.
We were
that all of
on
a sudden
this
it was,
like
pitch
middle
black.
boat, pitch black, stormy waves, lightning storm all around us.
2 hours
like,
from land. It
we
was
all
crazy.
We thought we were gonna die, like all of us. Not the kids. The kids were like totally oblivious, but like the parents were like kind of like in their
had,
minds like
baby Callie in one arm and
picturing
like a surfboard in the other
how are we
arm.
gonna get off
ready
this
to,
boat?
Yeah,
where are we gonna swim?
that was very scary.
Yeah, it was one of those like, this is gonna happen. How's Garrett's gonna grab Callie with the surfboard? I'm gonna do that. Like it was.
Yeah, like it's not like it was just you guys on the boat; it was your children as well.
Yeah, and then
that's-
we made it back safe to Sayulita, and our friends Sarah and Ryan Williams that live on the west side.
Yeah.
They we all got off and we were just like looking at each other like hugging, like
Oh
we're
my
alive.
gosh,
Like I
wow.
can't believe we're.
We had one scary, very like eye-opening situation though, where we were traveling to Turkey. This was 3 years ago, and while we were on our flight, the U.S. put out this like red alert, like do not travel.
They were evacuating like U.S. embassy people,
explaining
and
that
Westerners.
ISIS had like threatened any Westerners they had come across in that region, and so we land in Turkey to both of our parents just like freaking out, being like, "You got to get out of Turkey." It was really scary, and there wasn't a flight or an opportunity for us to leave until the next day, so we had to spend at least one night there, and we had happened to be staying in this like cave of a hotel type place, and we went to bed just very nervous, like holy cow.
Again, picturing the worst case scenario of like who's gonna get taken, how are they gonna take it, how are we gonna save
But I
each
think that
other?
was the very first time we had just like such a clear lesson of like you can't always trust like for your first impression of a people or a culture or what the media is saying, because if you were to ask us now like, hey, where do you find the absolute nicest people in the world? Top of
Turkey.
that list,
100%.
Turkey.
Wow.
Like such wonderful, kind, welcoming people. And so we stayed there. We woke up the next morning, and like 24 hours later I'm like, Jess, I feel wonderfully safe here. Like, what do you think of staying? We ended up staying the entire time.
No way.
And it was one of our favorite places. Like,
Absolutely. I
that
love
was a
Turkey.
great lesson for us.
I love it there. And I would recommend to like if you go, like have a guide who like obviously knows where you're going, but like we would be in the Grand Bazaar and you would see these people who like
By stereotype might look scary.
Yeah, by like media standards, like literally looks like a terrorist, and they kind of come up to your kids, and Turkish people love children, and they would come down, they would pull out a balloon from their pocket and make a toy for the kids. Like they were over the top, so in love with children and so kind. And like people, you would come in and you would try foods and they'd be like, here, take this. Like, and they weren't like pushy salesy, kind of like you can sometimes get in India. They were just like, yeah, just take it. Like just literally the kindest people, give you the shirt off their back. And like, and that's always been a lesson for us. Like obviously be a mindful traveler and be safe, but at the same time, like you can't judge a book by its cover.
I mean, it makes me think about when we were talking about education for your children, how you literally do like world schooling. Like they get so much amazing like education just from all that you do and travel with and all that you guys have learned from people and cultures. So I also want to ask you, like, what is like the coolest service work you've ever done?
It's tough. Like, it's like the best and the worst thing that we've ever experienced is when we went to Nepal and we worked with a nonprofit called Effect.org in the battle against human trafficking. They kind of explained to us, look, you're going to come here, you're going to see some things you perhaps didn't even know existed in this world. It's like the darkest side of mankind. And it's going to be really hard on you for the first day or so. And then once it kind of like settles in, then we can like get to work and start to like work on
and the whole
solution.
like thing too, they brought out a bunch of people from Silicon Valley. So there was a bunch of like marketing, IT people, tech people. And so what we would do at the end is we would have this like 2-day hackathon to like create something, like literally to like take what we learned and then create a tool to like help. And we struggled. We couldn't.
Jess and I, like, we couldn't get over
crawl
that hump of like, okay, we've seen the darkest and now let's try to like get out of there and be productive. Like it just
like the
tore us
first
apart.
step is always anger, and we like never got out of the anger step. You know what I mean? Like
Because you kind of feel helpless a lot of times.
When we brought our kids there, so like to be there with our daughter Dorothy, and it like wrecked
anyway,
us.
we ended up like working with this organization, and they challenged us to raise $25,000 to
$50,000 to build a school.
and because education is the #1 prevention in human trafficking, right?
At that time, we had like I don't know, like 80,000 followers
yeah.
on Instagram. And I was like, guys, how are we going to raise $50,000 when like I can't get like 500 likes on a photo? Like the numbers aren't going to work out here. I'm sorry. But they challenged us and I was like, oh shoot, like, well, let's at least give it a go. It's a good thing to be working towards. And props to our audience. Like they came through and within a month we raised a full $50,000. It was awesome.
That's amazing.
It was really special. And then, 2 years later, we went to India and we visited our school, and it's beautiful and so cute, and just in like a really poor area, but like the cutest little kids just doing yoga in the mornings and like.
And our kids
wow, that's so
like,
rewarding.
Because
we actually, our favorite like nonprofit is Charity Water. Do you guys know Charity Water? Yeah. And we did like a fundraiser type thing with our audience, and I found that like your audience like rallies behind you when you have a cause to really support. Like your audiences are amazing.
Well, and I think. Props to Garrett. Garrett's a really great storyteller in all of our videos, and I think he really effectively, like, we told the story. I remember the first time we recorded our vlog, though, we literally just sobbed through it. So you started to edit it, and you're like, "This is not going to work."
I love how vulnerable you guys are, though. You guys cry like every other episode. I feel like I feel like I might have cried online maybe like once. Like it's mad props, vulnerable. No, I cry a lot, but I don't know if I cry.
Especially in our
online.
like Bucket List Friends videos. Like literally yesterday we filmed it, and I'm like,
oh, me too. Bucket List Friends. I mean, not my Bucket List Friends, but my membership. Which you guys, they're the ones who inspired me. You guys are the ones who inspired me to start my membership, and I love my membership.
I love it.
Yeah, that is incredible. I think that audiences really rally behind when you support a cause, and that's so cool. So I have my last question for you guys. Do you guys think that social media has kind of hit its reach and there's like a bubble, being like the entrepreneurial side, and like you have so much insight behind these things. You talk to so many really successful people, and you just kind of you amaze me when I come to you with like questions and stuff. You have all these ideas, and oh, that's interesting that I've never even thought of it that way. So what are your thoughts on social media and how it's just become super oversaturated, and is the bubble going to break? What's the future going to look like in your mind?
So I do think social media is greatly broken. For example, I spoke with someone who works at Instagram and Facebook, and I remember telling him like, how much does it bug you that people will talk about like the golden days of Instagram or the golden days of Facebook, and how much it's just broken now, and how they hate the algorithm and they wish they could go back to like a chronological feed. And I was like venting all the things that like everyone vents about, just wanting like a social media platform in its purest form. And this person is like high enough at Facebook, they like make the decision, they like control what Facebook is becoming. And when I heard them say, they go, people think they don't like what Instagram is becoming, but if you saw the numbers, it proves that people actually do like it more because they're spending more time in an app. Mm-hmm. And when I heard this person who determines what Facebook is becoming say it that way, it broke my heart, because I was like, nah, you think like they're making their decisions based off of analytics and numbers. And I'm like, there's a very different experience between someone opening the app, enjoying it for 5 minutes, and then turning it off, feeling fulfilled, and then going on, versus someone just getting in this like rabbit hole that they like explore
unhealthy mindset
for like 20 minutes, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, what happened to me? They turn it off and they feel gross.
Right.
Instagram wants the second to happen.
Yes, because that's where they make more money. Yeah, it's all about the money.
And so if you only make your decisions based off the numbers, you're going to choose that second scenario. And so for that reason, I think social media is just like, it's a broken thing. And so the good news, the silver lining here is it's up to the individual how much they let it be toxic and negative, versus who they follow, how they use it, the information or the content that they create and put out there. And so you can't complain about it too much, because at the end of the day, it's like up to you.
Mm-hmm. That's really impactful, I think, because I totally agree. It's totally up to the individual on how you form and shape what you look into and what you're paying attention to and absorbing. And I think that is definitely the way to go. We can't really expect these companies who are, about profit and about how to grow it and how to get as many people online as possible, who are taking advantage of our weaknesses, right? Right? And we can't really blame them. But at the end of the day, it's up to us. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. Like, you guys are so inspiring and impact so many people every day, and I'm just so thankful you came on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, congrats. This is amazing.
Thank you.
We're so happy for you.
Thank you. All right, bye.
Yeah.
Sounds good.